What's going on, college football fans? It's the Mac and Murray Show. We're doing a little live reaction post week 2 of the College Football Playoff Committee, picking their top 25 teams in college football. Definitely a lot of movement, maybe not as much at the top as we thought we might see with A&M. But like we did last week, we're going to work our way from 25 up to number 1, give you our thoughts on what we're seeing, what the committee's seeing. But I'll say this overall. Was pretty happy, EMAC, with the first round a week ago. I'm pretty happy once again. I don't know if it's just an easy season for the committee or what it is, but like I don't really see a lot of pushback. Like maybe a couple things here or there, but like overall, I think they're doing a pretty dang good job. Is it a case of just that's the way the season's playing out and we kind of know where all these teams are generally, or are they just doing a better job than last year? Because it is a
Yeah.
bunch of new faces in that room.
Well, it is nice when the games, take care of themselves, the team take care of
Yeah.
themselves, good or bad. My obvious biggest gripe last week was just, the seeming disrespect for the ACC, and then it plays out the way that it does, and you can't just scream at a wall, right? Like
Yeah.
there's facts and there's reasoning, for those rankings. At the time, I didn't think that that was the case, but now you have that, kind of justification and kind of things here. Other than that, I mean, it is what it is. I still think there's again, an argument for it is timing of losses relevant or not? They say no, but we see that it clearly is. And so, I think it's pretty interesting just to look at Miami versus Notre Dame,
Oh yeah,
and
we'll
just
get to
how they
that
did
one.
that.
That's
They
that's
did
a big
correct
one.
it a little bit, though. They moved Notre
Yes.
Dame up, and I think that was because of the public, kind of outrage of
You
saying,
know
"What are you
about
doing?"
Miami? You mean move Miami up?
Yeah, they moved Miami up 3
Yeah.
spots for beating
Okay.
Syracuse. Yeah, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? I think that was a
Well,
correction. I
well,
think
let-
that they
well,
did
well,
it.
I definitely want to get to that topic. So when we get to our top
Yeah.
15, we're definitely going to talk a little Miami and Notre Dame. But let's start with 21 through 25 and work our way down. 21 Iowa, 22 Pittsburgh, 23 Tennessee, 24 USF. The first group of 5 team in there is the USF Bulls. Memphis loses last week. Now USF in there at number 24. There's a lot of teams. Obviously, we've talked about the American and the teams that can make it from that conference. Still feels like USF with Memphis going down last week. Tulane feels like they're have a legitimate chance of being that team. I still think North Texas, very good football team. They're going to have a lot to say about it, but it's going to be interesting to see because it looks like 3 of those teams in that conference could be fighting it out, could have a 3-way tie to see who goes to the conference championship. And then you got James Madison in the Sun Belt that's saying that, hey, don't forget about us over here. So there could be a lot of chaos in the American, and James Madison may be the one that benefits at the end of the day as well. So going to be fascinating with the group of 5 EMAC
Yeah.
down the stretch here the last few weeks.
I will say I am happy, that USF is ranked because
Yeah.
last week we had none. And again, I think the committee kind of forgot that they had to rank one of those
Oh
guys
yeah.
or should rank at least one of them. But I have to say, too, the Tennessee thing, I'll kind of defer to you. I would much rather see them in Iowa out and a James Madison in, who's 7-1 and who played Louisville really well and lost by, like 1 score. So, it is what it is. I know we can sit here and say, well, what if those teams played? Well, they didn't, and we don't know. But all I know is one team's 7-1 and playing really, really well right now.
Yeah, and
So
I'll say this:
that's
like
kind of a
I
pull I
was
would like.
lost. I was lost a week ago. I hate talking about losses being good losses, but I mean it was against a top 10 team in Oregon, and it took a last second field goal.
In a hurricane.
So
What other excuses do we want?
there's
Throw them all
plenty.
out.
I know. Cincy at 25 was interesting because they got
It was
blown
interesting.
out.
Yeah.
I was a little surprised to see them there at 25 creeping in there. All right, so that is 20. Hey, group of 5, baby. You made
We're
it.
in.
Let's
We
freaking
made it.
go. Group of 5, baby. Whoa. And it's my USF Bulls. Let's go.
Facts. Tampa boy.
Not Texas. That's Bulls. Bulls. All right, let's move on to our next grouping. 16 Georgia Tech, 17 USC, 18 Michigan, 19 Virginia, and 20 Louisville. Obviously, the big movers down. Virginia and Louisville losing, as you alluded to. The ACC felt a little bit disrespected, and then they had one of the just god awful weekend. I don't want to get back into that because I don't want to make EMAC
Thank
stress out even more
thank
about
you.
the ACC. But they moved down significantly. Georgia Tech moves up to 16. You and I still have a lot more faith in Georgia Tech than the committee does. We
Yeah.
have them in our top 12. We have them as a playoff caliber football team. Obviously, defense is a big question. Their last loss, a big question. They're going to have an opportunity to obviously make it to the ACC championship game. They're going to have an opportunity against Georgia, who's the number 5 team, to put all the doubters. So everything's in front of them to do what they need to do to move into the top 12. I just think, based on what I've seen, they deserve to be higher. The committee for back-to-back weeks does not think so, even though they moved them up a little bit with Virginia and Louisville and their
Yeah.
losses.
Yeah, well, this is the ACC block, and I'm gonna go ahead and
Yep.
throw Miami. They're 15. I'm gonna put them in
Yep.
here just because I think this is an interesting, conversation here. The way that it was just presented on ESPN by Reese and Company, was that because Miami is the highest rated or the highest ranked, ACC team, that they're kind of like being deferred in, the playoff as the ACC representative. Let me just lay this out for y'all.
Doesn't work like
They
that.
are not in first place in the ACC. So that's great that they're ranked higher than Georgia Tech and Virginia. But as it stands right now, Georgia Tech and Virginia are in that position because they only have one loss in the ACC right now. So that's kind of a weird, misleading graphic. I don't know why they want to defer that way, but it
Yeah.
is not Miami. So Miami fans, if you're listening or watching, you're not in. So I don't know why they did that. It's kind of silly, to be honest with you. And again, Georgia Tech and Virginia have great opportunities this weekend. Georgia Tech, they better win by a million going against Boston College. But Virginia, you're in an ACC championship game, elimination game with Duke. So, Duke's sitting right there and still has an opportunity to get into this ACC championship game. And that's my Armageddon. I'm not bringing that up either, but it is what it is.
Yep.
So I just wanted to lay that out. If Miami fans are watching right now, and if they're hearing me say this, you're
Does
not in the
Miami have a
playoff.
path? I mean, is there a path for Miami to get to the ACC championship game?
Well, sure. It would take
Yeah.
absolute chaos because, again, they have 2 losses right now, and you have
Okay.
5 teams that only have 1 loss, and some of those teams beat Miami. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of the thing. You've got tiebreakers, you've got head-to-heads, strength of schedule comes in, which that would actually really help Miami if they get into that situation. But it would take chaos. It would take Louisville and SMU essentially losing out the rest of the season, which I don't think that's highly likely at all to really happen. So they are all but mathematically out of Charlotte. The interesting thing, if they win out and they're 10-2, and Notre Dame is 10-2 without a conference
Yep.
championship because Notre Dame doesn't get that, how will the committee view them? I think they're kind of showing their hand here a little bit, but that
It's
head to
still a
head
lot of
has got
jumps.
to
I mean,
matter at 10-2, 10-2.
so this is just look at the schedule. Miami has NC State, Virginia Tech, and Pitt, and say Pitt loses to Notre Dame this weekend. So
Mhm.
Pitt, all of a sudden, is not ranked inside the top 25. So like you could have 3 wins down the stretch for Miami that aren't ranked, or excuse me, aren't against any top 25 team. So how do
Yeah,
they view those wins? And you can say the same thing about Notre Dame. Like, at least they get Pittsburgh as a ranked team, so maybe the committee views it a little bit differently, but it's still a wash. 2 teams that each team would beat at that point if both teams do
right.
win out. And then Notre Dame has Syracuse and Stanford, so there's not really any gauntlet left for
Yeah,
Notre Dame. So, like, it will be interesting to see, like, Miami doesn't have a lot of games that could necessarily jump them significantly up. I think that gap would have to close by Texas and Oklahoma losing, like this weekend. Say Vanderbilt losing at some point. Maybe Utah or BYU. I think if the gap closes close enough to where Notre Dame and Miami are within 2 spots of each other or a spot, and then it gets to that discussion at the end of the season of who deserves a spot at 10-2 with,
Mhm.
say, the number 10 or 11 spot up, then I think they could make that switch. I think right
Right,
now, if it finished up today, I don't think you could jump Miami 7 spots ahead of Notre Dame at the moment.
right. Well, of
I
course,
think the
this
gap is
is
still
this
big.
is yeah,
It's
yeah,
gonna close if
correct.
Miami handles their business.
Right, and which is, a big deal, and Mario
Yes.
Cristobal and company have not been able to do that in November, but
Yeah.
you look at the teams that play. I mean, Texas probably gonna be out after this weekend, Oklahoma probably gonna be out after this weekend, and then you're just talking about 3 teams that are
Yep.
right there. Because really the race is to number 10. Like, that's
Yes.
that's the biggest deal, and then you start to factor in, okay, if they're not the ACC championship, is the race actually to number 9? So it's gonna be really interesting just to see how this committee continues to view them. Do we see, Miami A, take care of business, B,
Mhm.
that committee just marginally move them up like we just did from the first poll to the second poll? So not as many quarrels. Again, the biggest
Additionally, too,
arching
like
thing.
Miami, Vanderbilt too, because Vanderbilt has an opportunity to go 10-2.
Sure, yeah.
Does Vanderbilt stay ahead? Because
I
they have a
know.
game against uh
Tennessee at the
Tennessee
end.
left.
Yeah. Yeah. Who's somehow
So
magically still ranked. I don't know. We're just gonna keep doing that.
that's gonna be an interesting one too, because Vandy has a chance to go 10-2. So you may have Notre Dame 10-2, Vandy 10-2, Miami 10-2, all trying to get one of those last couple spots. Who
Right.
ends up getting it at the end of the day? All right, Utah at 13. They said it. I mean, I really don't get that one. They're kinda stuck there. Um, I'm interested. I get to cover them this weekend. I think it's a really good football team. Excited to cover them against Baylor, but having them at 13 ahead of, like, a Vanderbilt or Miami or Georgia Tech too, I don't like that really much at all. Um, BYU at 12, they knew down. Oklahoma, Texas, we talked about them last week. I don't think that either of them are, especially Oklahoma, top 12 teams. And, listen, they have an opportunity to change my mind this weekend, or
Right.
they're gonna be out of it, and we don't have to worry about talking about either of them
Yeah.
the rest of the way.
It feels like they're just a placeholder. I mean, literally
Yeah,
this weekend, it will all dramatically, I think, change, and we
I
don't
agree.
have to worry about them anymore.
I agree. 9 Notre Dame, 8 Oregon, 7 Ole Miss, Texas Tech, and Ole Miss switch, which I like. I don't,
Yeah.
McElroy said, "Hey, I wouldn't have been surprised if Texas Tech moved up to number 5." I don't know if I'm ready to put them ahead of Georgia just yet.
Mhm.
I think
Mhm.
moving them up 1 to number 6 spot, I think it's a great spot. I think you wanna leave that just in case. Obviously, Georgia has a win against Texas. That way, next week, you don't have to flip-flop them again.
Right.
I think that would've been a pain in the butt. I think if Georgia loses, Texas Tech would move it at number 5. I think Texas obviously would move up. I don't think Texas would jump Texas Tech, but
Mhm.
leave Georgia there until they lose a game, and then you can move them back. So I like where the committee did, keeping Georgia at 4. Obviously, Bama beat them head to head. Bama stays at the number 4 spot. And then the big discussion was, does A&M, after a dominant win on the road
Right.
against Missouri, catapult them above Indiana, who had a close, last minute, 2-minute drive to win their football game? I'm sure in the committee's eyes, it was, hey, awesome win for A&M, but Missouri was playing a true freshman quarterback in his first start.
Mhm.
Like, it
Could
was
be.
a
Yeah.
ranked win, but is it as sexy enough to move them ahead of Indiana? I would prefer A&M at 2. That's kinda where I have them, but I'm not gonna live and die on the fact that, A&M is number 3 and Indiana is number 2. I think both
Right.
teams have the opportunity to earn that number 2 spot at some point this season.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it would be nice though to reward a team going on the road against a ranked
Yeah,
opponent, getting that dub, a big dub. So it doesn't make a ton of sense to me, just of what we value and the fact that Indiana struggled. Now they were on the road too in a place that they've
yeah,
never won, but that's a bad team, a team that we've seen getting beat down time and time again by other opponents. I don't know. It's interesting how we evaluate. And again, that's nitpicky stuff when you're
yes.
talking top three. But I do think it would show their hand a little bit on what they value, what they don't value. So at the end of the day, Ohio State looks really dominant. They're number
Yeah,
one. A lot of people are high on Ohio State here. But the thing that we've said, and I'll continue to say this, I know you feel the same way, they haven't really been tested. I know we could say
yeah,
Texas way back when, but that, doesn't look as great anymore. I guess maybe recently it does. But when you're in a fight and you need your best stuff, can you reach down and find it? We don't know that for them because
yep.
they've just been blowing people out. And maybe
Just
we never
storm
will
Bill.
know. Maybe they'll win everything by 20 at the end of the day. But I am interested just to see when Ohio State gets in that fight, what do they have to pull from? What do they have to win?
We might not find out until at Michigan, last game of the season, or obviously in the Big Ten championship game. So that's your 1 through 25. That's our thoughts. Like I said, I think we both agree overall, very good rankings, couple little things here or there, but I think the committee's doing a pretty damn good job. I'm not hearing a lot of bitching from a lot of personalities either. So hats off to my boy Mac. I'll see him this weekend there at Baylor as I'll be on the call for their game. So I have to go give him a little handshake and tell him he's doing a hell of a job with the rankings so far. So appreciate y'all listening. Like, subscribe, and we will have more. We'll have our special guest, the film guy, Brooks Austin, joining us this week. So make sure you subscribe so you get notified when that drops this week as well. Have a great one, everyone.